He says the problem with teaching is, what's a kid supposed to learn from someone that decided their best option in life was to become a teacher? He reminds the other dinner guests that it's true what they say about teaching. Those who can, do, and those who can't, teach. I decided to bite my tongue instead of his. And I resist the temptation to remind the other dinner guests that it's also true what they say about lawyers, because this is dinner after all, and this is supposed to be polite conversation. I mean, you're a teacher, Taylor. Be honest. What do you make? And I wish he hadn't done that. Ask me to be honest. Because you see, I have this little policy about honesty and ass-kicking, and that if you ask for it, then I have to let you have it. You want to know what I make? I make kids try harder than they ever thought they could. I can make a C+ for like a Congressional Medal of Honor, and I can make an A- for like a slap in the face. How dare you waste my time with anything less than your very best? You want to know what I make? I make kids try harder, and I also make parents tremble in fear when I call their house at about dinner time. Hi, this is Mr. Molly. I hope I haven't caught you at a bad time, but I wanted to let you know something that your son said at school today. He stood before the biggest bully in school and said, "Leave the kid alone. I still cry sometimes. Don't you?" And it was the single noblest act of courage that I have ever seen. I make parents see their kids for who they really are and for who they can be. You want to know what I make? I make kids question. I make them wonder. I make them criticize. I make them hypothesize. I make them apologize and mean it. I make them write. I make them read. I make them spell definitely beautiful, over and over again until they will never misspell either of those words again. I make them show all their work in math. I make them hide all their work in their final drafts in English. I make them understand that if they've got this, and if they follow this, and if anyone ever judges them about what they make, they can give them this. Let me break it down for you so you know what I say is true. I'm a teacher and I make a difference. How about you? That poem is called What Teachers Make. By the looks that some of you were giving me as I was reciting it, many of you have probably heard it. It's by a poet named Taylor Mali. Taylor Mali is one of those few people that actually makes it as a poet, solely as a poet, but his inspiration came being a former teacher. He taught for 9 years in New York City schools. He got State Teacher of the Year for New York, I think in 1996, and ever since then, he's doing everything he can to make education better. He's my role model. He's the guy I'd like to be one day, minus the poetry. I want to write curriculum. But he did something that I find truly just amazing. He challenged the entire country by going through a sort of transformation. He decided he wasn't going to cut his hair until he got confirmation that he had inspired 1,000 people to become teachers. And from 1996 until 2012, he didn't cut his hair. He got rather long. But in 2012, he cut his hair because he got confirmation on the 1,000th person that decided to become a teacher. I'm number 638. I wrote him. He and I converse back and forth. He's one of my heroes. I try to be like him. But it's kind of like why we're here. This right here, I need to make a bumper sticker, put it on my car, because I am a teacher, but I also love teachers. I love what we do. I love what you guys do. There are 35 people in this room right now that exemplify everything that's right and good and true with this world. You're an educator, you love kids, you get up every day, you do absolutely everything in your power to make sure that their lives are a little better, they're a little brighter, and when they leave your room in May, they're a little more prepared to face this rapidly changing world that we have in front of us. We're here to celebrate you. We're here to celebrate teaching. We're here to recognize your sacrifice, because let's face it, what we do, we don't really get paid for. What we do, we rarely get recognized for. But what we do is absolutely worth it. Every single day, you wake up and you have a group of kids in your head, and every single day, you trudge yourself through the doors of that building, exhausted, sometimes having worked an 8-hour shift right through the middle of the night because you couldn't stop dreaming about that one class, about that one kid, about that one assignment. But you try, and you go, and you do, and it's worth it. You're trying to build the future. We all are. Whether you're here as an administrator, whether you're here as one of the teachers being recognized, or whether you're here as a person just supporting one of those teachers or administrators, that's our ultimate goal, isn't it? We're trying to make tomorrow better. And that's exactly what you do. You exemplify that cause, you exemplify that effort, and you do it well. You go in with passion, you go in with enthusiasm, you go in every single day, ready to lead the charge, ready to go on and say, I'm here to make a difference. And that's what I'm challenging you to do today, is to stand up and be the difference, not just make one, but be it. We'll get to that a little bit more later. For me, anytime I do a little speech, people always ask me just a little bit about myself. What inspired me to teach? How did I become the Texas Teacher of the Year? Today's not ultimately about me, so I'm just going to spend a minute or two on this. My mission, like Dr. Page said a second ago, was to save the world. It has been since I was a kid. I was 11 years old, and I knew from the beginning I wasn't going to be a superhero, but I was going to save the planet somehow, some way. I thought I was going to be an astronaut. Clearly that didn't work out. This didn't help. But I was going to save the world. And my mom and dad got divorced at a pretty early age. I ended up living with my mom. My brother ended up living with my dad. My mom raised me, single parents, one child, straight through middle school. And she decided to do something that would ultimately change my life for the better, despite how hard it was for her. She went back to school at age 35. Her name is Jeremy Wagner. And she decided she was going to be a teacher too. At age 35, she spent 4 years in college raising me by herself. I went through all of middle school and part of high school, and she finally took that job as a 5th grade math teacher. And then I saw something I couldn't believe. She was that kind of teacher that got in there every day and made the kids love her, made them love math, made them try. She worked for a 95% low SES school, mostly Hispanic kids, and she turned lives around in 5th grade. She became my inspiration. I knew when I saw her do that, that's what I wanted to be. This is how I was going to save the world. I was going to be a teacher. And then in high school, I met a man named John Franklin. He was my high school GT teacher and U.S. history teacher. And I had the rare privilege of having this man follow me through 4 years of high school. He was that male role model that I never had. He drugged me through the mud. He helped me apply for college. He helped me figure out who I was as a person. He helped get me off of a path that I was going to go down, despite my mother's efforts. And he taught me what it was to be a man. And I owe him everything. But I hated history. Despite his efforts, I still couldn't do his history. As far as I'm concerned, Washington crossed the Mississippi to fight the Japanese during the Cold War. I'm glad some of y'all got that. Then I started teaching, and I met my wife. That's her, Emily Wagner. She's my inspiration to keep going. She keeps me from jumping off the cliff. About once a week, I come home from school, I'm fed up. Principal did this. I'm fed up, this kid did this. I'm fed up, this parent said this. I'm fed up, I'm going to quit. But she keeps me on track. She keeps me going. I owe her everything. And then my last inspiration is this little redhead right there. My jewel, light of my life. Lainey Ann Wagner. I get a little choked up just even thinking about it. I'm a proud dad. She is a constant reminder of what I'm aiming at. One day and one day soon, she's going to be in school. And I want to be the person that affects schools in such a way that she enters a building one day with a teacher and with a group of kids that have an enormous potential to do anything. She's the blank canvas that reminds me that every parent has a son or daughter that is a blank canvas too. And they deserve everything that I can give them. It's the same thing you guys do on a daily basis. And I tell you these stories to let you know and remind you that many of you have these same stories, a very similar background. Something inspired you to be a teacher. Something reminds you on a daily basis that you have to be in that classroom and you have to be that difference and you have to help that child. And that makes you all worthy of being a teacher of the year, just like me. How did I become teacher of the year for the entire state of Texas? I'll be totally honest. It was part skill and part luck. I have this knack for getting in front of groups and being able to talk. Sometimes about nothing, just talk. And a lot of teachers are afraid of that, despite the fact that they can stand in front of a room full of 30 students and blabber on about whatever content they're teaching for 40, 90 minutes at a time. And still keep those kids' attention the second they get in front of their peers. That's something I fight, I have to be honest. I do get nervous. But the road to becoming Texas Teacher of the Year, you're all pretty familiar with the fact that Texas is broken up into 20 regions. Each region gets to elect one secondary and one elementary teacher of the year through an interview and portfolio process. Some of you maybe even have participated in this process. And from the pool of 40, 3 secondary, 3 elementary is selected, and the 6 finalists are interviewed in front of a panel of judges. And I have to tell you, I remember almost nothing about that interview, but I do remember the nightmares I had coming up to that interview. 12 judges representing all of the major state organizations for teachers, the state PTA, the State Board of Education, TASA, ATPE, AFT, you name it, they were there. And I remember having a dream one night about sitting in a dark room with a U shape with 12 people sitting in a chair, me sitting in one with electrodes tied to my legs. And if I said something wrong, nope, you're out, done. And I don't remember a single thing about that interview other than the fact that I went in and I came out 37 minutes later thinking, and somehow they picked me out of 330,000 teachers. And it wasn't because I was better than anyone else. It was luck. I was the right person at the right time in the right place with the right message. But every single one of you in here is fully capable of doing the amazing things that we all do in the classroom every single day. And I tell you this story not to brag on myself, but to brag on you, because there are 330,000 teachers in this state, and you were 35 of the best. Going on, this looks familiar to you. Why me? I'm dedicated to the kids. I have a passion for the profession. I continually go through professional growth. Continually. You ever hear that? Oh, it must be nice to have summers off. What? I wouldn't know what a summer off looked like if you threw it in my face. I'm sorry. Relationships. I have relationships with other staff members, students, and parents. And all of us are good at one or all of these simultaneously. You build those relationships with those kids so that you can make a difference. You build those relationships with those parents so they can know what's going on and how they can help their kid and how they can help you. And things go on on a daily basis. These are all things we all do right here. Our connections to the community. We try to pull people into our classrooms. We try to Skype with someone across the country. We try to Skype with someone across town or in their classroom. And we try to connect with businesses and pull them in and let the kids know what the real world's all about. We all do this. And then we spend our extra time. We spend so much extra time that we don't even remember what extra time looked like. I dump mine into my robotics program at my campus. We participate in the BEST program every single year in the GEAR program. Take these middle school kids and introduce them to engineering. You probably do something similar, some kind of club, somewhere, somehow. It's something. Maybe it's UIL. Maybe it's the student body government. Maybe it's something. But you spend some kind of time. And then there's a Children's Miracle Network. I mentioned that one because there's kind of a funny story involved with this. My first year teaching, before I met anyone, this district decided they were going to try to raise money for the Children's Miracle Network. And they were going to do it with a whole bunch of fundraisers involving teachers embarrassing the snot out of themselves. And I decided, heck, I'll throw my name in the hat. If we meet this benchmark, I'll kiss a goat. And if we meet this benchmark, I'll do this. And I did all of these things. And I ate some disgusting stuff. And I had to kiss a goat. But they set a goal for the campus that I was working at, 65% low SES for $1,000. And they thought, we have a lot of pretty poor kids, high poverty levels, $1,000, pretty ambitious. I was like, no. These might be low SES kids, but they're generous. They give and they give and they give. These kids don't have a scrap of paper to their name. But if they find a pencil on the floor, they'll share it with any one of their buddies, just asking, no problem. They give. So I said, I'm going to raise the bar. I told the entire class at lunch one day, the entire school rather, you get $3,500 and I'll shave my head. Don't giggle. That was a lot of hair ago. It mattered more back then. But I told them I'd shave my head. Boy, that got them fired up. 2 weeks later, the school raised $3,502. $2. I begrudgingly shaved my head. totally bald, down to the, like, wax and all. I was shiny. And they loved it. And I got remembered for it. And you all do things like that all the time. You embarrass yourselves to make the kids have fun. You engage with them to make them remember. And you find ways to make every day, every experience unique. You are all teachers of the year. Now, I want to have a quick activity because as we go through here, remember, my entire idea is for us to be able to learn how to stand up and be the difference. Not just make a difference, but be the difference. So to do this, I'm going to paint an ugly picture. A very ugly picture. I'm going to show you a whole lot of things that are wrong with education. But before I do that, I need to give you a strand of hope. Because my goal here is not to make you run out of this store screaming, saying, I'm going to change my job tomorrow. My goal here is to make you understand that you can make a difference with every single one of these problems that I'm about to present to you. So here's your strand of hope. I want to do a quick activity. At your tables, you have at least 2 to 3 people. I want you to kind of break up into smaller groups, and I want you to converse and answer this question. Why did you become a teacher? What was your inspiration? And then I'm going to get 1 or 2 of you to share out with the group. Now, when we talk, I'm probably not going to give you a full 5 minutes. I'll give you probably 2 to 3. So when you're sharing, keep it relatively brief if you can, so that someone else can share too within the time frame. And I'll give you a warning more about halfway through, and you should transition to someone else. And then I'm going to ask for a couple of brave souls to share with the entire room. You all ready? Talk. Excellent. Y'all are a perfect class right there. That's a strategy I try to use with my kids. I encourage discussion very frequently in my class. I teach science. And going through college, I remember learning that you had all these different types of learners. You had your audio learners, you had your visual learners, you had your kinesthetic learners. Those were the 3 big ones. And then you had Gardner's multiple intelligences that branched out amongst all of those. But I'm recently finding, and I'm wondering if anyone's doing any research on this, there's this 4th major branch that's been developing since technology has just overrun everything. Social media has taken over everything. You have your social learners. Many of our kids are what I would consider to be a social learner. They simply don't get it unless they're talking about it. And that's something that's been probably led and rung into our head since we were young. You know, going into college, going to be a teacher, we've been told you don't truly get something until you teach it. It has to do with the talking about it. It has to do with the social aspect of learning. And so I do this all the time with my kids, and that's one of the management tools I use with them. I give them a good solid 10-second countdown, wrap up, finish your sentence so they feel like they haven't been cut off, and it usually helps. So use that if you want to. Now, brave souls. Does anyone feel like they would like to share with the group? There we go. Let's share right here. Teacher voice.
I've been teaching 7 years, and looking at it, you know that I had to have done something else before this. I'm 60 years old, but 8 years ago I retired as a captain with Delta Airlines. And I flew jets for 27 years. I was a pilot in the Air Force, instructor pilot in the Air Force, eventually a captain with Delta. I retired and flew my own airplane and chased a little white ball around for about 1.5 years. But I found out something, that retirement isn't all what it's cracked up to be. Because chasing a ball around is not fulfilling. And I found that there was a giant void in my life. And my wife said, well, why don't you teach? As an instructor pilot, I had that experience teaching and I knew it was a neat thing. So I thought, who's going to hire a guy at 53 having not really taught in the school system? Well, I was given the opportunity to teach, and I can tell you that teaching does fill a huge void.
Very good. Now let's give him a round of applause for doing that. All right, one more. Someone volunteer someone. You liked their story. Right here.
My story is very boring. My parents were educators. Growing up, I used to have reading groups in the garage, so I wanted listening bars to share her story. She's a beautiful story.
Thank you for volunteering.
So I volunteered.
Well, what inspired me to be a teacher was because when I came to the United States, I didn't speak any English.
Where did you come from, if I may ask?
From Mexico.
Excellent, okay.
And so when I went to school in pre-KK, it was so very hard because I didn't understand anything. I didn't know what was going on. I cried every day. I hated school. I hated going to school. And so what motivated me was the fact that as I was in school, I learned the language. And then when I got a job at the
You're making a difference in a way that so many of us don't even consider
It was
sometimes.
a very hard road, learning English and just getting into the groove of things. So now it makes me feel good, to help someone.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so what I want you to do, the story that you either thought about or shared, hold on to it. Don't let it go. It's your light at the end of the tunnel, okay? Now let's dig. It's not all rainbows and unicorns being an educator. There are tough days. There are the days that you sit in the parking lot, you stare at the front door, and you understand that Johnny is in there right now. And you are certain that Johnny is plotting your very demise. And it stresses you out because Johnny, oh that Johnny. But you manage up the courage, you walk in that door, and then the day just falls apart like it did, like you were anticipating it to. It fell apart, and you go home that night, and you cry, and someone holds you, and you hold yourself, and you eat some ice cream, and then you fall asleep, and you dream about work. And you dream about all the things that could go wrong the next day. But then, that idea comes into your head. This is how I'm going to save Johnny. This is how I'm going to make that difference. This is what I'm going to do. And then you go in and you try it, and you understand that one day, Johnny might remember that impact, that difference that you made. And he might remember when he's crossing that graduation stage, grabbing a diploma, and you'll turn him around. But gosh, was it tough to do it. Oftentimes you sit back and you think, I'd love to do something less stressful than being a teacher, like, I don't know, any of these things. Real estate agent, advertising executive, commercial pilot, police officer, frontline medic, heart surgeon, you name it. Practically anything would be less stressful than what you're experiencing right now. And we're all there sometimes, but it's worth it. Now, I'm going to digress for just a second. Where are my non-educators in the room? Raise your hand. Someone that came and supported someone else. Okay, just a couple of us. That's all right. This still applies. Have you ever had either yourself or someone you're married to as a non-educator wake up in the morning and basically...
The welcome mats are out at all 15 North Texas Honda dealers during the Hello Honda event. Take a seat.
Sorry, advertisements on YouTube are always fun. All right, and then you wake up in the morning and this is you or someone you know.
Come on, it's time to go to work. Come on.
It's time to go to work.
It's time to go. Come on. It's time to go to the kennel. Kennel time. Kennel time. Come on. Come on. Let's go. Come on.
And that goes on for a little while, but you get the idea. We've had that morning. We've hit the snooze about 17 times. We managed to make it into work that day. Lucky to have shaved, lucky to have combed our hair, lucky to have found a matching pair of socks. And it's because we did what I was saying a second ago. We worked in our sleep. We have to go back to work, and I just got off a 36-hour shift. Are you kidding me? And that's the way it is. There are many challenges ahead for us as educators. Let's take just 2 minutes. I want you to have a quick conversation. In your folder, there's a piece of paper and a pen. I want you to try to narrow down 3 things that we struggle with as educators that you feel like need to change. You need to change quickly. 2 minutes, go. Beautiful. All right, let's just popcorn. I do this in my class a little bit too. Popcorn out ideas. In one word, just tell me a couple of things that you know need to be changed. Anybody? This is called awkward wait time. I'm sorry? Expectations. And like maybe accountability. Okay, what else?
Ownership.
Ownership. Good. What else? Funding. Budget. What else? Bureaucracy. What else? Parents. Community. Communication. Basically, anytime I ask a group of teachers this question, and even a group of parents, invariably, we all come to the same conclusion. There are typically 3 things A lot of things fit under umbrella, but there are typically three things that desperately need to change about education, and they need to change soon. The budget, the state level testing, and teacher accountability. Those are the three things. And you could argue that these two are very tied together, but I argue they kind of serve as two totally different entities, because there's an offshoot here, not linked to this, that I would like us to explore. How are you going to respond to these challenges? What? I can't change the budget. I can't. The star is here to stay. What are you talking about? I can't do it. Yes, you can. I'm going to show you how. Let's talk about the budget first. This guy's named Jamie Vollmer. You may be familiar with Jamie. Jamie Vollmer is a man that epitomizes the very idea and thoughts about what a budget for a school should look like. Or at least he did before he changed his mind. He was giving a speech late 1990s or so to a group of teachers. He was very famous with his company, at least in the ice cream world, for having the best ice cream in the United States. Voted in New York in a big, massive competition, and they decided that he absolutely had the best blueberry ice cream in the nation. And he was in front of a group of about 1,500 teachers in this district and was basically grilling them for an hour about everything that they were doing wrong. And you could see it in their eyes. They were stewing, they were furious, they were mad. He was like, I've done it. I've reached them. I know that I've done a good job here. But then he opened the floor to comments and questions. And this English teacher, about 4'6", stood up, fireball in person, and said, Mr. Vollmer, you make the world's best ice cream, yes? And he said, absolutely, I make the world's best ice cream. And she said, you use only the best products, right? Oh, AAA grade, I do nothing but use the best. What if you have a shipment of blueberries come to your factory, and some of them are mildewed or a little rotten? What do? I turn them away. I use nothing but the best of my ice cream. Sir, I'm a teacher. I don't get to pick my blueberries. And he stopped, and he realized I made a terrible mistake. These teachers are about to eat me alive. And they almost did. Luckily, he survived, because now he's one of the biggest advocates for education ever. The teacher went on and she said, I don't get to pick my blueberries. I get blueberries of all kinds. They come with ADHD, they come with 504 accommodations, they come with mental disabilities, they come with high economic status, they come with low economic status, they come with fights with their parents, they come with brothers that are lost in Iraq, they come with all kinds of things. I don't get to choose my blueberries, but I'm still required to make the same ice cream. And that changed his life. He had no idea. He was a businessman. And he was told to go talk about budget and how things were run in a school, and said, all schools should be run like a business. If I ran my business the way you ran the school, I'd be out of business. But school is not a business. We don't get to choose our blueberries, but we're still required to make the same ice cream. And this man right here has changed everything that he does about his life. He no longer runs the business company. He goes around speaking to educators around the world and business people, trying to change their mind, because business people are the ones trying to help us make our decisions, and they don't understand what we're working with and what we're required to do. And that's something we can change. Not the kids, but who understands what we're facing. We're asked to do more with less with our budgets. 2011 saw 24,000 teacher jobs lost. That's a lot. I just showed you there are approximately 330,000 teachers in the state. That's almost pushing double-digit percentage loss. It's huge. Declining funds are available for extracurriculars. We're seeing arts, dance, band, athletics even being cut across the board because we have to choose, pay our teachers or pay the extracurriculars. It's a tough choice. Which one's the right one? You can argue both sides, you really could. Most teachers, for the last several years, have seen no step increase in their salary either due to these budget cuts. That's an atrocity. So we don't get paid much as it is. If we don't get a raise, why are we still doing it? You know why we're doing it. Hold on to that dream, your inspiration. Are we paid enough? Well, duh, no. John Q. Public often says, you're just a glorified babysitter. My response to that is, why don't you pay me like one? I'd love to get $5 an hour per kid. Oh, that'd be great, wouldn't it? They don't like that response, by the way. Most typically, your standard job works 2,080 hours a year. That's 40 hours a week times 52 weeks. Your standard teacher has a contract that runs 7:30 to 3:30. On average, it shifts depending on where you're at and how your buses run and all that a little bit. But typically, we have an 8-hour contract for 180 days minimum. That's what the state requires, is 180 days. Most of us, 187, 193, kind of depends. But let's be conservative. Let's pretend we only work 180 days. And we only work 8 hours. That comes out to 1,440 hours a year. So many people argue, well, I work this many hours and you work that many hours. Why should you get paid what I get paid? They don't know what we do. They don't understand it. We show up for work 30 minutes, an hour early. We stay after an hour or 2 hours late. They don't understand that our 12 weeks off in the summer, we spend at least 8 of those doing professional development, lesson planning, looking at curriculum, trying to find better ways to educate our kids. But we're not paid for that time. So all the time that we're not paid for to do grades, letters of recommendations, tutoring, coaching, IEPs, 504 meetings, concerts, parent emails, contacting people, all this stuff is not accounted for, and it comes out to, on average, roughly 828 extra hours per year. We're not paid for, but we are working. Grand total, that comes out to about 2,200 hours, not 1,440. We are working more than your standard 9 to 5, 40-hour-a-week person. But we're not paid that way. And so what does that equate to? Your first year average teacher salary in Texas, that comes out to about $15.09 per hour. Does anyone know what the minimum wage is about to be raised to? 15. A first-year teacher is barely paid more than what is about to be minimum wage. Don't get me wrong, minimum wage is not there yet, but it's coming, and it's coming soon. This graph kind of exemplifies where we're at. Here's teachers, per hour, about $15. Here's your standard surgeon. I get it. Surgeons, they spend a lot going through school. They have residencies. They're in it a lot longer than we are. That makes sense. Dentists, similar situation, about $80 an hour. And then you start going down your road here. A typical realtor, a police officer, hotel manager, food service manager, a plumber. Don't get me wrong, we need plumbers. I would love it if kids went and decided they wanted to be a plumber because they pay well. I mean, holy cow, okay? But here's us. We're just above a restaurant hostess and a food cook who gets paid minimum wage, who will soon be even with us. Is that fair? I don't know. Should we talk about it? Not with me, I get it. Not with your parents, they get it. But who should we be talking to? Here's a fun fact. The New York Times said recently that as many as 44% of teachers have a second job just to make ends meet. I'm one of them. I'm the state teacher of the year, and I have to have a second job just to pay my bills. How many of you are in the same boat? Anyone? A couple of people are scratching their ears, and yeah. I bet you are one. It's tough. But doesn't pay really matter in the long run? There are ways you could argue both sides of this. What we do is fundamentally important for the very future of our entire country. We're raising the future. We didn't get into it for the money. We still do it. We still try. But this, ladies and gentlemen, the pay is why most teachers, half, right, don't make it past their 5th year of teaching. It's not worth it to them. I can spend this amount of time doing less and get paid more somewhere else. Right here, this whole graph basically says that the U.S. ranks 20th out of 29 nations for starting salary, and 23rd out of 29 for salary after 15 years. Singapore figures come from, this special place right here, but look at where we rank. We're pretty low in the totem pole here. When they came House Bill 5 to fix some of these issues, they've created some issues too, but it fixed some of them. They restored about $3 billion in funding, which helped. It stopped the current charge for vouchers. Vouchers, if you're not familiar with them, are basically the devil, okay? Pulling money straight out of public education, putting it into private hands who have no accountability at all. Reduced testing in high school, went from 15 tests to 5. I believe that's what it was, 5. And help secure the teacher retirement system. I don't know if you were aware of this, but the teacher retirement system was on the verge of collapse a couple years ago. And House Bill 5 basically made it solvent again. Lucky for that. And it helps ensure some steps are going to be taken to improve teacher quality. Haven't seen that yet, but I'm sure it's coming. But who led the charge for House Bill 5? Was it teachers? Was it parents? Was it community members? I can tell you with certainty, almost none of these people were teachers. Not one of them. But why is that? Why aren't teachers standing up for themselves? Why aren't teachers crying out and saying, we're not getting paid enough, we don't have the resources we need, we're not respected for the job that we do? Why aren't we saying these things? The only time in recent history that teachers actually banded together as one unit was in 1980 to get Governor White elected. Ladies and gentlemen, 330,000 teachers plus all of the parents connected to them, we are the single largest and most powerful voting body in the state. But we don't win elections at all because we're not together. Because we don't stop and we don't think, and some of us don't even vote. Do you know how many teachers vote on a regular basis? 30%. 30% of teachers vote. No wonder we're in trouble. Then comes STAR testing. Brief history. TABS, TEAMS, TAT, STAR, TOS. How many of you have seen all of those? Several of us. Good. I started my education here with TOS, and now I'm teaching STAR. But here's a fun fact. You know the STAR cost the state $500 million to develop? It's an awful lot of money to develop a test that, quite frankly, is broke. We'll get to that here in just a second. Where did this trend come from? Why are we going from basic skills to minimum skills to on-grade level skills to college readiness skills? It's coming from, oh, that's just for fun. Let's play school. I'll pretend to be a teacher analyzing disaggregated data, and you pretend to be a student taking a standardized test. Yay! Why have we gone from TABS to STARS? Because of things like this. This is the OECD report that shows where we rank amongst other leading nations in the world. And here's the United States, there, and there, in math, science, and reading. We're 30th in math, 23rd in science, 17th in reading. Well, what does this chart really mean? This, ladies and gentlemen, is why the nation has panicked and said, oh my gosh, we have to increase testing, we have to do more, we have to do more, we have to get our kids up to the top of that ladder. Well, I get that, but what does this ladder mean? Look at the people at the top. You got Shanghai, South Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, Finland. Well, I'll get to Finland in a second. Finland genuinely deserves to be up there. They're freaking rock stars. We need to be like Finland. But a lot of these others, I know personally, and I'm friends with, the 2012 and 2013 National Teacher of the Year, Rebecca Milwaukee and Jeff Charbonneau. They travel to all of these schools. They travel to these countries. And do you know what these teachers and these principals are asking us? How do you do what you do? How do you make your kids get out of school and make them so holistic and so wonderful and so ready to charge the world? And we're sitting here going, oh my God, we need to get to the top of the ladder. And they're asking us what we do and how we do it. And Jeff Charbonneau and Rebecca Milwaukee told me something very interesting about Shanghai and about Hong Kong. And I'm sure many of these others on this list follow suit. In those schools, at around 7th, 8th grade, these kids take a test. A rather important one. And it decides, are you going to go to trade school or are you going to go to high school and college? These numbers are not showing what we do. We test every kid. They test maybe half. These numbers are also not showing what these kids do in school each day. In many of these countries, in many of these cities, notice Shanghai and Hong Kong, not necessarily countries in and of themselves, they go to school for 8 hours a day and they don't get PE. They don't get art, they don't get dance, they don't get band, they don't get any of those things. They're getting the fundamentals, the core curriculum for 8 hours a day, and they train for this test. This is what they do. Do I want to be at the top of this ladder? I don't. The reason this has happened from TABS to STAR is because people are panicking about this, and it means nothing. It means nothing, and no one understands that. That's what we have to change. This means nothing. Are we doing what's best for our kids? Yes or no? Leave it alone. If it's yes, great, keep doing it. If it's no, what can we change? Why are we worried about how we rank with other countries if they're asking us how we do it, and they do it totally differently than we do it? Now, I'm not saying we need to test only half of our kids, don't get me wrong. We need to be held accountable for all of them. But we need to be measured with the stick that's fair, or ignore the stick entirely. I choose to ignore the stick. College and career readiness is what we're aiming at. A high school diploma today isn't enough, and why? That's because high school is no longer preparing students for the world to participate in an economy. What are we preparing them for? We're preparing them for this. We are no longer part of institutions that teach our kids to be citizens. We are part of institutions that teach our kids to test. And that's sad. I wish a politician with no teaching experience would come in and tell me how to do, or tell me how to teach. Should no teacher ever. So what should the goal be? Jamie Marisosis from the Lumina Foundation says that 60% of Americans should have a post-secondary degree by 2025. You ask pretty much any person, what's a post-secondary degree? Most people say 4-year college. Not true. What he means by post-secondary education is anything after high school. Trade school, 2-year degree, a 18-month engineering class, anything that helps them get prepared for a job. And he's right, 60% of jobs will need that by 2025. That doesn't mean you have to go to college for 4 years to do it. Where did this idea come from? Don't misread me here. I want kids to go to college. I do. But I want them to not be on welfare more. Jamie argues that 2/3 of the jobs in the U.S. will require them, and our high schools have been turned into get you ready for college machines rather than get you ready for life institutions. Is that such a bad thing? You could argue both ways. And then there's accountability. Do you know right now that this is a very true and dangerous thing on the horizon? Our accountability is soon going to be tied to testing because of some negotiations that were made between the U.S. Department of Education and our commissioner and our government. And we may not be able to stop it unless we band together and with one voice refuse it. We're going through something I call accountabilism. We're eating ourselves for the sake of accountability. We're destroying ourselves for the sake of accountability. We need to be accountable. Don't get me wrong. Because the human nature is, if I'm not being held accountable, I'm going to slack. I'm going to dive back. I'm going to do as little as possible. That's just the way it is. Not all of us are that way, but some of us are. We need to be held accountable. Are we doing it right? What does the STAR require of our students, and what does that actually mean? More of the test, if you're familiar with Bloom's, is at the analysis level and above than ever before. And did you know that actually the State Education Agency, TEA, they don't even use Bloom's anymore. They use what's called the depth of knowledge, DOK. The depth of knowledge is a 4-stage system. Bloom's was 6, this is 4. At level 1, basically your questions are the kind that have one possible answer. What is the powerhouse of the cell? The mitochondria, that's a level 1. Then you have your level 2, potentially 2 real answers. What is the benefit of having a nucleus in a cell? 2 or more answers to that. Lots of answers you could potentially have there. Then you have your level 3, where you're actually trying to analyze some kind of situation and come up with a result, and come up with an answer. The STAR test is at 2 and 3 almost exclusively. Questions that have potentially 2 or more correct answers, almost exclusively. That puts it at evaluation, analysis, and above on the Bloom scale, across the board. But where are our students? Think about Piaget's benchmarks. You have sensory motor stage, ages 0 to 2. Basically, you learn to interact with the world. Then you have 2 through 7, symbolic thought, low-level Blooms. You're starting to understand the world. You're able to communicate about it. Then you have 7 through 12. You get mid-level Blooms. You're actually able to apply some of what you're learning. Maybe think about it just a little bit in a different way. Then you have 12 through adulthood. Notice that is not a number. It says adulthood. Because Piaget was a smart man. He understood that adulthood is a range, much like all these other numbers are a range. Do you know that the U.S. Department of Health understands that the human brain is not done developing until age 25? Well into adulthood. But we're asking them to think in abstract terms when some kids can do it at 12, some kids can do it at 13, 14, 15. Most people can't do it until after they're 20. I was one of them. I remember going through high school science, and I remember thinking, gosh, this stinks. I hate this. I knew how to get an A. I was a good student. I could give you answers that you wanted, but I didn't understand it. Thank God I was tested under the TOS system, because if I wasn't tested under TOS and I took STAR, then I can pass it now. I get it. My brain's developed. But if I took it then, I don't think I'd have been a straight A student. This right here is a powerful chart. This shows at age 5, most of our kids are at the pre-operational stage, and that makes sense. They're young. They're still trying to explore the world. Their brain isn't fully developed. But as you advance through the years, you get to middle school, 12, 13, 14 years old. Look how many of our kids, as many as 30% of our kids are still at concrete onset operational pop. Concrete. They're barely able to apply what they're learning, and this has nothing to do with how they're being taught. It has everything to do with biology and how their brain develops. Ladies and gentlemen, Jesus could be standing in that room and teaching those children, and they still couldn't do what we're asking them to do on the STAR test. It has nothing to do with how well we're teaching them. Did you know that? You do now. You know who doesn't? Every single parent, politician, and businessman in the state of Texas has no idea what this is about. Not one. All we know is we need to improve accountability. That's all they know. And they're trying the best they can to do it. It's not their fault. They're not the enemy. Don't get me wrong. Our business leaders, our politicians, these people are put in positions to do good things. They just don't know how to do it because they don't get it. And we need to make them get it. How about we do this? Let's evaluate, instead of to testing, let's evaluate us on what's going on with our classroom. Einstein said everybody's a genius, the smartest man arguably that ever lived. And he said if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will always live its whole life believing it is stupid. You probably have this tied up in your wall somewhere. Okay? It's a true statement. Why is drinking age 21? It's just like I just said, the U.S. Department of Health knows we're not done developing until 25. Aha! You don't fit the standard. No race for your teacher next year. Round peg, square hole. Here's the alternative. Let's link it to true teacher evaluation. Let's evaluate us on evaluations. What? Let's get people into our room to give us rigorous evaluations that are more frequent with meaningful feedback and meaningful coaching. I would much rather be judged about what I do in my room every single day with my students than be judged about what my students may or may not be able to do on a test at the end of the year. And let me tell you why. My students can stand in front of you and you can ask them, hey, tell me about the atom. And they can go on and on for 10, 20 minutes about the atom. They can tell you everything they know about the atom, the periodic table. You can talk to them and you can tell them they get it. But you put them in front of the STAR test, you start asking them questions about the atom, it falls apart. Because their brain was down here, not up here, if you remember the chart. And we had no control over that. Now, this sounds kind of scary. More rigorous, more frequent teacher evaluation. I argue that we need a system that's still graded on a 1 to 5 scale in each domain. But I argue that our best teachers, our really, really good teachers, there are 3 on a 1 to 5 scale. And you know why? Because we need room to grow. And this gives us better incentive to strive and to do better and to try harder on a regular basis. And we're providing feedback and coaching to do so. Really amazing, truly astounding teachers are a 4, and Jesus is a 5. No one's a 5. Okay? We want to continually grow, we want to continually do better. And through more frequent, rigorous evaluations, we have a stack of paperwork that says this teacher is doing their job. I've been in their room 28 times this year, just in this semester alone. And I can tell you exactly what they've taught and how they've taught it and how the kids were engaged in the activities that they did. Let's judge a teacher on that. How's that sound? Pretty good to me. And then we're also battling the public view of education. There are a whole lot of graphs and charts that don't make a whole lot of sense to parents and to businessmen and the people that make decisions for us. All they can tell is that there's declining performance. No wonder there's a declining performance. We've gone from tabs to STAR, and we still got the same kids. Of course we're going to decline. Poor ranking with other countries. Well, we just talked about that. That means nothing. Scandals all over the place with education. Sex ed teacher allegedly sent explicit photos to a student. In Birmingham, Alabama, schools targeted students with withdrawal before the tests actually happened. Chicago, Freakonomics author catches cheating teachers in the classroom. Thousands of schools are affected by teacher strike over pay and conditions. This is what hits the news. How many times have you looked at a news article and saw a teacher was awarded at the Jack Harvey banquet? How many times do you look at a newspaper and see a teacher with a kid on the floor doing an experiment, talking about how they engage their kids? We see this. This is what the public sees. This is what we have to fight. Because this is a rarity. This is not what happens every day. But that's what they think happens every day. And we're often left with more questions than answers. It's because we're not providing the answers. We know them, but we're not telling anybody. We're guarding them like a precious treasure. But there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Remember that story I asked you to hold on to? Think about it right now. What's my message? Stand up. Be the difference. Be someone that goes out there and actually does something about these things. And what I'm asking you to do, believe it or not, is going to be a lot simpler than you might fear. It's going to be very simple. Now, when I was asked to do this, I was asked to choose a book. They're sitting up here for you. Each of you is going to get a copy. I was asked to choose a book that exemplified kind of a message that I wanted to give to the teachers. And I thought about all of the books that I read. How to improve literacy in the classroom, and teaching strategies, and research on kids, and the list went on and on. And I was like, I'm in front of 35 of the best teachers in Northern Texas. They've read all those books. And so I went a different route. What could I find that actually had to do with standing up and being the difference and actually fighting change, or creating change, which is what we need to do. And The Tipping Point came out at me by Malcolm Gladwell. The Tipping Point's a pretty good one. It talks about where there's a catalyst. Basically, one person can make a difference. You ever seen that video where the guy starts dancing to the concert, he's looking all goofy, and then one person joins him, and then suddenly two more join in, and all of a sudden there's 120 of them? That's basically what the tipping point's about, how one person can make that kind of difference. Then there's the elephant in the room, which basically analyzes the moral imperative of doing something. If we know something's wrong and we do nothing about it, is that just as wrong as making something wrong intentionally? That book analyzes that question. I'm not going to give you an answer because the book doesn't. It just raises the question and does a rather good job of it. But then I settled on Who Moved My Cheese? Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson is a book based in the business world. But it does a just tremendous job of actually laying out how change is a good thing, and how to react to change, and how to be a catalyst for change, and how to make change occur in a way that's positive instead of negative. And I don't want to give you all of the points of the book. I want you to actually read it. And I'd absolutely love for you to email me and tell me what you thought of it. I thought it was great. But when you read it, put yourself in a context of not as a business person, but as an educator. Keep in mind that the people we're talking about is you. You are the mouse. And your goals are the cheese. And just remember that as you read it. Now here's my solution. Is there too much to fix? Sure sounds like it. But if not, how can we? The answer is really, really simple. Engagement, voting, awareness, advocacy for the profession. Now that sounds like a lot. It sounds like you're going to have to do a lot of extra stuff. But it's really pretty simple. How did we get here? Well, I told you. We're like that frog in the boiling water. Teachers have a thick skin. It's the best way I can describe it. We hop into a pot, we swim around, everything's great, and then someone turns up the heat, and it slowly gets hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter until eventually it boils. Our nervous system is a lot like that frog. That frog will not react to danger as long as the danger comes up slowly. If it comes up quickly, great, we'll react, we'll knee-jerk, just like Governor White in 1980. That was a knee-jerk reaction. But we've been in the boiling pot for over 20 years. And it's getting to the point that we're in the danger zone. And it's because we have thick skin. It's because we're in the classroom. We can let it roll off our back. And we move on and we teach and we continue doing great things. But it's time to realize and step back and see the whole picture. What are we facing? What are we up against? Voting and engagement. I said a little while ago, 30% of teachers voted in the last governor election. 30%. Talk to the people you work with. Just tell them, hey, I'm going to go vote. When are you going? Give them some motivation to go out there. Give them some facts. I'll tell you, it's morally wrong to tell a person how to vote. You should never do that. But it's never wrong to give a person information. For example, governor race is going on right now. Did you know that the race already is down to 2 people? One Democrat, one Republican. Do you know who you're voting for yet? Because if you don't, you should. One of them is very pro-education and one of them is not. One of them backs teachers on a regular basis, and one of them went before the Supreme Court of Texas and testified that vouchers are a great thing and we should do it. Do a little research, figure out who it was, decide who you're going to vote for. Fewer than half of those that vote, fewer than half of the 30% actually write and call them representatives. How's a representative going to change anything if they don't know what needs to be changed? We don't use our voice. We don't tell people what needs to change, and so it doesn't get changed. And we need to engage in politics, not in a way that we're engrossed in it. You're a teacher. That's what you need to be engrossed in, but we need to be aware of what's going on. Most teachers, y'all are the exception. You look around, you're like, we've been talking politics since we got here. Y'all are the exception. Think about the teachers you work with. How many of them know the governing race is happening? I can think about my campus. I can think of 3 teachers out of 72. 3 of them know what's going on. The other 72, totally oblivious, couldn't care less. That has to change. Teachers and parents should be deciding every election, not just the 1980 election for Governor White. We should be the deciding factor for all of them. Governors should be chasing us, trying to make us happy. And that's the truth. Stop voting on party lines. I'm a Republican. I'm going to vote Republican. I'm a Democrat. I'm going to vote Democrat. It doesn't matter what you are. I think the current presidency and what's been going on in the Senate and the House now is a perfect example of what party lines are absolutely incapable of doing. Erase the line. Start looking at issues. Advocacy for the profession. Teach like every day was the day your principals when you come in and evaluate you. It's only then that we're going to start changing all of those headlines we see. If we give them nothing bad to write about, then the public will start changing their mind about us. Pull in the community, open your door. No more closed doors, have a revolving door. I'd love to put a revolving door in my classroom. I want parents in my room, I want principals in my room, I want community members in my room. I want them to see what I'm doing. Because if they see what I'm doing, they know I'm doing a good job. And they know you're doing a good job. And they know your neighbor's doing a good job. And they know that everything they see in the newspaper is a bunch of bull. Inform people, correct misconceptions. These are the misconceptions I'm talking about. It must be nice to have summers off. You only get paid 9 months out of the year. Quit complaining. Go get a second job. You're just a glorified babysitter. It must be nice to work 8 to 3 and have weekends off. Do you know what to say when people say these things? Most of us shut our mouth. Most of us let it roll off our back because we have that thick skin. And I'm not saying be rude. Don't go out there and be rude. Have a positive way to respond. When someone says it must be nice to have summers off, I respond with, I wouldn't know. I don't get summers off. And then that starts a conversation. And that conversation turns into information, and that information changes that person's mind. And that's what we need to do. You only get paid 9 months out of the year. Get a second job. All those numbers I just showed you about what we get paid, share them with that person. Well, hey, did you know I only get paid $15 an hour? Did you know that? And then they start asking, well, why do you only get paid $15 an hour? And that conversation turns to knowledge, and that knowledge changes people's minds. You're just a glorified babysitter. Go ahead and tell them, I wish. Pay me like a babysitter. Then I might get paid what I'm worth. $5 an hour per kid. The only way that might be bad is if you're elementary and you're self-contained. But secondary on, holy cow, you'd be rolling in it, wouldn't you? It must be nice to work 8 to 3 and have weekends off. I'm sorry, sir, you're misinformed. I work 7 to 5 most days, sometimes later. If there's robotics competitions going on, for an entire 2-month stretch of the year, I work every single Saturday for 8 or 9 hours. If there's UIL competition going on, I work every single Saturday for about 2 months, for about 4 hours. Yeah, it would be nice to have weekends off. I'm not sure what you're talking about, sir. The conversation turns into knowledge, and that knowledge changes his mind, and then he spreads it, or she spreads it. They go and talk about what they heard in the grocery store with that teacher. They're like, did you know teachers only get paid $15 an hour? Did you know that? That's insane. Ladies and gentlemen, all I'm asking you to do is to talk. Use your voice. I'm not asking you to spend extra hours in the day doing a bunch of research and trying to go out and talk intentionally with every single person you know and trying to change their mind, because that would be folly. Use opportunities that come up naturally to respond. You don't have to go hunt the opportunities down. They come to you. But know what to say and how to say it. Here's a big trick. I was going to do this, but I'm about out of time. In fact, I'm running over by about a minute. Make what's called an elevator speech. An elevator speech is 30 seconds top in length. That 30-second elevator speech needs to bring up 3 things. You can bring up a problem, a solution, and a statistic, or 2 problems and 1 solution, or 2 statistics and a solution, something like that. Just 3 talking points, something that you can literally tell someone in 30 seconds. Why 30 seconds? Because this situation is very unusual. I've had your attention for over an hour, and you've been a wonderful audience. But most people, when you're talking to them, 30 seconds, and they're done. You need to get to the point, you need to do it quick, and you need to practice in front of the mirror. Have it ready so that one of these things right here comes up, you know what to say, and you know how to say it, and you're prepared. Think about that. Practice that. Stand up and be the difference. Close your eyes for a second and think about your class. Think about all of your students. Think about the story that you shared with people a while ago. Why are you here? Why do you do what you do? Why is it important? Push everything that we just talked about aside. We don't get paid enough, I know. Push it aside. It's not fair, testing, I know. Push it aside. Why do we do what we do? Because the kids are worth it. Because the kids that you're envisioning in your head right now, that child, that group of children, they deserve a future that is bright, wonderful, and you're helping provide it to them. So stand up. Teaching is a giant moment of truth and dare. It started when you were in college. Moment of truth, I'm going to apply, I'm going to be a teacher. Dare. Go to your first class, realize, ooh, this is going to be harder than I thought, but you do it anyway. Moment of truth, you get your first job, you want to do an interview. Dare. Dare to accept the job. Truth. You walk into school the very first day, on the first day of school, standing before a group of young minds ready to accept everything you have to impart on them. Dare. This week did not go the way I anticipated it. I dare you to come back. Moment of truth. Someone approaches you and says, we'd like to give you the Jack Harvey Award for Excellence in Teaching. I dare you to accept it. Moment of truth. Is what I do worth all of this effort? And now I dare. Who here dares to stand up and write letters to their congressmen and their senators? Who here dares to stand up for their children in their classroom and demand that we get paid and that we receive money for our school to do what we are supposed to do? Who here dares to stand up and inform the public anytime the opportunity arises exactly what we do and how we do it? Who here dares to stand up and be a representative for education as a shining beacon, the hope of the future, the hope of the world? I dare to stand up and be that person. Now, who here dares to stand with me? Thank you.